I'm going to talk a little bit about vices today. My vice vice, I should say. I really like vices. Um, it's just one of the things I feel like I can't do without in a shop. And this is my main vice. Uh, it's one of those things that I inherited from my dad. And right now, I haven't been able to use it since I put the little lathe over on my workbench over there. I had to take it off. So that's why it's just sitting, floating free right now. So, it's an old Craftsman, 3.5 inch. And it did most of what I needed it to do, although, occasionally I would wish I had a bigger one. But you'll see it has suffered some abuse, and I can promise you that's not from my father. That's a teenage version of myself messing around there, doing stuff I should not have been doing with this vise, putting a cheater bar on it or some stupid crap like that. So it's been through a lot, and it still works very well. I like it. And when I figure out what I'm going to do with that little lathe, no one has bought it, by the way. I'm leaning towards putting it in, just packing it up for storage until such time as I build a shop in the back. That's probably what's going to happen, because I need my space back for the time being. Anyway, so I've been living without a vise while this has just been floating around. And so how have I been surviving without a vise, given how much I reach for a vise? Well, here is kind of a little genius thing that I came up with. Genius for me. My standards are low for genius. I had actually made this before I needed to get rid of this. This little, can you see that? Let me zoom out a little bit. There you go. All right. Yeah, so this is a Wilton that came to me free. It was actually mounted inside of a truck that I had for a while until my wife made me get rid of it. But it's a pretty decent vise, although I was kind of disappointed to find out that by this time in the evolution of Wilton, they were doing their production offshore. This is actually a Chinese vise with the Wilton name on it. Kind of sad, but hey, what are you going to do? Anyway, so even back when I had this one, the Craftsman, available to me, I sometimes wanted a soft jaws. And I had this one laying around. I didn't have a place to mount it. And somewhere I got the inspiration, because you know what happens with a vise, there's no mounting, it's just going to fall down anytime you put it in. So somewhere I had the inspiration that, well, what if I just gave it enough of a little lever up here to, offset that tendency of it to want to fall over. And lo and behold, this really works very well in a lot of applications. It also, it gave me an extra vise that I could put soft jaws on, so that worked out great. But I use this a lot. I used it a lot even when I had that one mounted, because I can carry this out in the driveway if I need to clamp something up and, grind on it or whatever. It's been a lifesaver since I've had to do without that one. So I highly recommend this type of little arrangement right here. And since I did this up, obviously, if you're putting any kind of sideways torque on it, you're out of luck unless you have a good enough surface to clamp it down. You also lose the ability. I like to have my vise jaws even with my table, so that if I have some big long piece, it can, have room, and I've lost that ability with this. But for a lot of purposes. This type of arrangement will really do the job. And I've since seen, I'm a subscriber to, I'm just checking to see if yeah, I'm in the camera. Okay. Paul Sellers, a fantastic traditional woodworker who is English. I mean, if you're at all interested in traditional woodworking, you've got to check him out. Anyway, I noticed that he had one of these, mounted on a piece of wood that he would occasionally drag out. And well, I have a wood vise over here. He would. His arrangement is designed so that he can mount this on top of his wood vise. So if he has to do a little filing or something like that. So that's another idea. If you have a little vise laying around, that I think could work very well. All right, just checking to make sure my battery hasn't run out. So this has kind of gotten me through. But I came across a situation where I was really wishing I had a mounted vise. Basically, I'm making some hardware for my sailboat. This was a prefabbed piece that I came across. I salvaged it from another boat. This is the one that I made to match it. It's stainless, and it turned out to be some really hard stuff. I'll tell you, that was kind of an adventure. I mean, that looks like a very simple job. Drill and, countersink, and anyway. Like everything metalworking, it turned into a learning experience. It was pretty tough. This was thicker material than this, so I had to mill it down, and I burned out an end mill doing that. Anyway, I got to the point where I needed to put the bend in it, and I really wished I had a vise. Now this, even with this vise, I mean, it could have done it, but this was a situation where I kind of wished I had a big honkin' vise. I'm going to stop this here so I don't run out of battery, and I'll go ahead and start again. Alright, so the situation was, I wished I had my mounted vise again, and I wished I had an even bigger one mounted. And the thing is, I've had one kicking around for years underneath the bench here. Is a project vise, very rusty, and my dealer Zach, I've talked about before. I told him more than a year ago, hey, I want a big honkin' vise, and like the very next day he calls me up and says, I think I got your big honkin' vise. And this is what he had. Let me get this out of the way. I'm going to move you over there so you can see it a little better. But just to give you a little size perspective. That's a big honkin' vise. Hang on, I'm about to be called for dinner. Alright. Dinner was good. So this is another perspective on the big honkin' vise. This is a Reed number 206, which I think the 6 has to do with the fact that the jaws here are 6 inches wide. Stands 11 inches or 10.5 inches tall. It's a big honkin' vise. And yeah, it was. It's obviously been around, suffered its fair share of abuse, been beat on. It's lived outdoors for a while. You can tell when you see this pitting up here, but if you see the section that lives inside the main housing, it's pretty smooth. Anyway, what prevented me for the longest time from taking the project on, was it is so heavy that I was waiting until I finally built my dream metal table that one of these days is going to come out to existence. Anyway, so I finally just said, I needed a big vise for that little jobber there, and I said, well, what would it take? And maybe I could just beef up my little outfeed table that I've been using as a workbench for 5 years now. I threw some gussets on it. Anyway, so it's not perfect, but it ain't too bad. And this thing is weighted down with enough that I was really concerned with my my little roll around benches that I have, that this thing would just tip over. So much weight. When this is connected to this, it's a whole unit plus the rotary base, which I'll talk about later. It's well over 100 pounds. I haven't weighed it, but it's manageable for me to move, this around separately or this around separately. But when you put it all together, I mean, it'll give you a hernia. So I was kind of scared to mount it to one of my other little benches. I would hate to have a tip happen. Someone could get hurt. The vise could get broken. So, like I said, I had kind of put that on the back burner, thinking that one of these days I'd have my nice big Tom Lipton style metal bench. That just hasn't happened yet. So I decided to go ahead and do this, and I'm glad I did, because it gave me the inspiration. Now, I didn't use electrolysis to clean this. I was just too impatient. I just took out the old cup wheel on the angle grinder, so that's how I did it this far. As things tend to happen, I wound up rigging up the electrolysis tank again anyway to do something else. So I kind of wish I'd just gone ahead and done that with this. Probably have been more thorough. I have not decided how far I'm going to go with this thing in terms of prettifying it, if that's a word, making it pretty. I threw a little oil on it to try to prevent flash rust. Am I going to paint it? Am I going to try to fix imperfections in it? If I ever learn brazing, I may want to try to take care of this. If I really want to make it pretty, not just pretty, actually nicer to use. This is a heavy ass handle, and it's kind of sloppy in there. I could see, I've got some nice stainless shaft around, and I could put a sleeve in here to make it, more of a precise type fit. So I could simultaneously make it lighter and better feeling than this sloppy thing. I don't know. Would that be a good idea? What do you think? So, that's where I am, vice situation right now, except one more thing. You'll probably say, wait a second, if you're a vice guy, where's your Wilton? I confess I just haven't been able to peel off the hundreds to the extent it seems you have to get one of those. Zach's had a couple of them, and I just haven't been able to part with the money. However, I did come across this at the scrapyard. This was lying right next to the big honkin' vise. This was a $25 purchase at the scrapyard. It is a Prentice. Can you read that? I'll put the before picture up before it went into the electrolysis tank. As long as I had the electrolysis tank running, I went ahead and threw this in it. It's still seized up right now. Actually, this will turn, but it's still seized in here. This is seized. Yeah, it's got work to do. So I've thrown some liquid wrench on it. I'll just let that sit for a while. I got other stuff to do. But that's a cool little vise, though, isn't it? I really like it. I think I'm going to wind up painting it and then, running a sander across the embossed, the raised section here, and then clear coating it. It'll look nice. I'm wondering whether this, it looks like this should come out. Don't you think? Because otherwise, why would it be even cocked sideways unless it just floated in there? So I have high hopes for this vise. All right, so that's the extent of my vise collection at the moment. The old favorite, the one I've been getting by with since that one's been out of commission. The big honkin' vise that I put into service very quickly because I needed it, and then a little restoration job that I'll talk about some more later. I'll also talk about in another video the rotary base for the big honkin' vise. You can see it was welded at some point to a table, and so if I decide I want to repair that, I'm definitely going to have to learn brazing. I have to do a little Keith Fenner action. So that'll be an adventure. I do not own an oxyacetylene rig right now, so that's definitely on the back burner. But it works the way it is. Another project associated with that. See, I have it mounted right now, if you can see, with studs from my Bridgeport. I tried to use these little guys with the caps that go on them, which are right now in the electrolysis, so I can't show them to you. But these are, you can see they sit flush with the bottom here of the rotary base. So if you try to introduce any extra width in here, like putting it on a 3/4 MDF, or basically any extra width, there just isn't enough length here. So a project that I think I am going to do in the not too distant future, if I can find my piece of stock. Well, in any case, I think I'm going to use the opportunity to do some threading on the Atlas to make myself some longer bolts that I can replace those studs with, and then use the caps so that way I don't lose those caps. So that'll be something to do. So that's it. That's my Vise Vice. Hope you enjoyed. Oh, you know what? I am going to throw some vacation pictures on the end of this. I figure if Randy Richard can show fishing videos, then I can show you some of my vacation. I took the family to Ireland for the kids' spring break. It's the first time the kids have ever been out of the country, and we had a really nice time.